Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another one of my videos. Today I want to discuss the work done by, or at the very least made famous by, the psychologist at Yale University, Paul Bloom. In 2016, Paul Bloom published a book titled Against Empathy, and judging by the title, I'm sure you can understand why it was so controversial. Now, I know what you're all thinking: why would you ever want to be against empathy? Of all the emotions to be critical of, such as greed, jealousy, or anger, shouldn't empathy be at the bottom of that list? I thought the same thing, however I've since been convinced otherwise and now believe that empathy is one of those emotions that we need to have greater control over. Let's start with the definition. What is it that we're talking about when we talk about empathy? As Bloom states in his book, many people associate empathy with kindness or good-willed intentions, or really just about anything good that you can think of. However, when psychologists think about empathy, they're strictly thinking about placing yourselves in the shoes of other people. In fact, the dictionary definition associates itself much more with this interpretation rather than the general interpretation that might be viewed upon by most people. By empathy, we're talking about placing ourselves in the shoes of another person, trying to feel what it's like to live the life of somebody else. This is generally viewed as a virtue because, as Sean Carroll states, this can give us a starting point for us to want to do something about somebody else's misery. He says we should try to empathize with people that don't look like us, that don't share the same skin color, that don't share the same gender, that don't even share the same social, religious, or cultural values. Males, for instance, try to empathize with women to try to understand what it's like to live in a man's world. So far so good, right? Empathy sounds like a bang-up job. Why would anybody ever want to be against it? I don't deny that empathy can bring a lot of good to a society. However, not only do you not need empathy in order to attain similar moral virtues, but the negative aspects of empathy outweigh the positive ones. Bloom goes over studies that results should come to as no surprise. We feel more empathy towards people we consider attractive, or who look like us, or who share the same race, ideology, skin color as us. It also causes us to be innumerates. It causes us to pick the few over the many. It causes us to pick the familiar over the foreign, the immediate over the long term. And Paul Bloom goes over many studies that demonstrates this. If we really want to lessen the suffering and misery of other people on this planet, we need to better objectively evaluate situations and scenarios. That's not to say that you shouldn't prioritize relatives over strangers, or that you should donate all of your money in your bank account to every charity you can imagine. We evolved to want to be happy, and a society that is so focused on charity to the point where they're donating every single penny they have, well, that society would just be a miserable one. It's about finding a proper equilibrium between keeping ourselves happy and keeping everybody else happy. And the best way to place yourself around this equilibrium is to be as objective as possible in your moral stances. Don't fall for sensationalized stories that you see on the news about little Billy stuck in the well while everyone is ignoring greater dangers like the proliferation of nuclear weapons or climate change. It's empathy that causes governments and news media to focus on such isolated stories and ignore ones that require our more immediate attention, like civil wars and political turmoil in the Middle East, instances that, quantitatively speaking, causes more harm to more people. We're at a point in time where we can think about why we evolved to be empathic and why we should be against it if we want to lessen the suffering of other people. We evolved to be empathic because it increased the likelihood that people that shared the largest percentage of our genes would live towards the next generation. People that looked like you would be prioritized over people who didn't, people that shared the same skin color, people that shared the same religion or creed. At this point, however, we're smart enough to recognize that this is a knee-jerk reaction that is no longer necessary. An adaptation has now become maladaptive. Empathy was instilled upon us at a time when we were still concerned with throwing rocks and parabolic darts in hopes of killing the closest potential danger. For the most part, in first world countries, this is no longer something we need to be concerned about. Paul Bloom received a lot of backlash on this topic, and it's completely understandable. This is one of those discussions where, even though I have a pretty staunch and assertive position on, I completely understand why other people would differ. Someone like Sean Carroll will agree with Bloom's concerns, however, we'll still find value in empathy as a way to get us to care about people that don't look like us, and then we can utilize our cognitive abilities to counteract the biases. However, as Bloom has stated, this isn't actually how empathy works. By definition, empathy gives us biases, and it gives us a slanted perception of morality. It's a common misconception that people that are more empathic are more moral, and people with little to no empathy are just moral monsters. Studies show that this isn't true, however. One study focused on demonstrating a link between aggression and how empathic one is, and the correlation was virtually zero. Tests also show that empathy predicts practically nothing. It's irrelevant. The fact that we have varying degrees of empathy toward people proves this. If two people are drowning, and one is a murderer, and the other one is a college student who's a lifelong champion of civil rights, you'll immediately feel more empathy for the latter. That means that moral decisions are being made before the empathy emotion kicks in. Rather than having our rationality warp our empathy, it's our empathy that warps our rationality. This is why I wholeheartedly agree with Bloom, and why I think that Against Empathy, The Case for Rational Compassion is one of the best books to read if you're interested in moral philosophy. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll be uploading another one next week. As always, thank you very much for stopping by, and I hope to see you in the next one.